Hello, peoples, and welcome to another edition of the RobCast. We are here in the back house with somewhat longtime friend Scott Harrison,
Hey, man.
who is here from the great city of New York. Welcome to the. You haven't been to the back house before.
I haven't. I'm loving it. It's beautiful.
Scott Harrison is founder, CEO, now author, but founder and CEO of Charity Water. And there's so many places I could start, and we're going to work our way towards the book, spring. We got a bunch of things we're going to talk about at some point at the end of this episode.
We first met right when I projected on the wall of your house
Yes.
in Michigan.
In early 2009.
I remember you had a white brick wall.
Yeah.
I was a little upset because my images were slightly distorted against your brick, being a purist. But,
Yes.
I'm like, this isn't, Rob's not getting the best experience I could give with the photos.
And we
But
were
we were in your living room.
We were moved beyond measure anyway. Okay, so for my RobCast friends who aren't familiar with your work, let's start back here. Charity Water started 2006.
2006, yep.
How much? I was thinking the best way to open this up would be to say, how much money have you raised since 2006?
About $320 million.
You've raised $320 million, all for the purpose of.
Yeah, I mean, to bring clean and safe drinking water now to 8.4 million people.
8.4 million people. When you look, so we're 12 years in to Charity Water.
Yeah, I thought it'd be more, honestly.
What does that say about you?
I kind of can see the end. When I started, I could see the day when everybody would have clean water to drink.
Mm-hmm.
And I really started at the end. And
And that's how many people in the world? 600 million?
there's 660 million people that need clean water. So we've got about 1/78th of the current problem solved, 1.3%.
And you live with these numbers every day.
I do, and I'm more optimistic. I tend to fall towards optimism. So the number that I'm focused on is this year. We're going to help about 3,800 people, new people, get clean water every day. So today, morning, go through the day, go to sleep. By the time I wake up tomorrow morning, another 3,800 people have clean water for the first time in their life. We'll get about 1.5 million people water this year.
Okay, I just spent 2 days reading your new book, which is sort of your story. In many ways, it's a memoir that also happens to be sort of the founding of Charity Water.
Mm-hmm. And hopefully some useful tips and tricks for people starting things.
It's an astonishing book. So I feel like I've been in your head or your space for the past couple of days. Let's go way back. And the first time I heard you speak and you talked about what happened with your mom,
Mm-hmm.
I found myself looping together. You're driven, and this getting everybody who needs access to clean water. Were you always driven? Would whatever you did you push it?
I did push it. I was initially driven to be a doctor because I wanted to help sick people like my mom and then also help my mom specifically. It's interesting, Rob. I was driven and not. And then I was a terrible student. I barely graduated high school. So I guess the things that I really wanted, I tended to go after.
Mm-hmm.
But it didn't apply to all areas of my life. Even when I went to NYU, I kind of limped through college and, C minuses. And I went to the minimum amount of classes that I thought I would need to just not to fail. But other things, when it came to, clubs or even I remember having a leaf blowing business as a kid. I really liked blowing leaves, and I was trying to get as many leaf blowing clients as possible to pay off the loan on my, $700 leaf blower. So there would be these things that I would go really hard after, and others that I might almost surprise myself at how lame I was at them.
Okay, let's pause here. Now that you have 2 young kids,
Yeah.
How will you raise your kids if, let's say, one of your kids is slacking off or doesn't particularly take a shine to academics?
For my wife and I, academics were never a huge part of our lives or our professional formation. So I'm
You said that so tactfully.
I'm surrounded by families often who are pushing their kids to get only the best grades, and the studying matters. And I think reading really matters to me. I would attribute the fact that as a kid, my parents put a television in a cold room in the winter. They wouldn't heat that room. There were no chairs next to the TV, and I would have to sit on this firm bed, looking down at this tiny little TV. So because that was such a terrible experience, I read voraciously. So that's, I think I care about reading, but the academics, the grades, neither my wife or I, would have attributed that to our, eventual professional, success of some sort. She wound up becoming an amazing designer and animator, and is an incredible artist, but not because she studied really hard. Maybe because she studied
Fascinating.
the world, or maybe because she had real life
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny because I want everybody to read your book, so I got to think about what to ask you that doesn't just give away different pieces of the book. So you start Charity Water 2006. You're, I want to say 31, 30,
Yeah, it was my
29.
31st birthday party.
And there's a whole
And this is a
backstory to the
theme that
backstory to the backstory to that. But go
this
on.
is a theme that somehow I want to tease out, because it's just started dawning on me that there is this party theme in my life.
Absolutely.
And it started with a party. So for 10 years previously, I had been throwing really decadent, hedonistic parties at 40 nightclubs in New York over that period of time. And, the drinking, the drugging, the sex, the gambling, the pornography, the strip clubs, the whole, what you might imagine in a Studio 54 leftover culture. And the dinner at 10 p.m., the club at 12, the after hours at 5, the stumble home at noon. There's a scene I read about in the book, right? I remember taking a duvet, at somebody's house and trying to blot out the
Like
sunlight.
duct tape the
Duct
blanket
tape
to the
the
windows.
duvet, the comforter. And in that moment, also getting a glimpse out the window on Houston Street in New York, on everyday people in suits just going about their lunchtime
Yoga.
business. Yeah, it just felt like, what a degenerate I am. I got to take an Ambien to come down. Like, who goes to bed at noon? Unless you're a surgeon and you have to, or someone working in, a night shift. So I think it was really important starting Charity Water off with the party and trying to say, hey, all the parties that I threw to no good end. Arguably 1,000 parties over that decade. Could I take what I've learned and could I actually throw a party that matters? Can I turn this? Can I redeem this? And what was great about that night was 100% of the money that we raised. It was $15. Everybody came in and paid $20 at the door, which at the time was what it cost us to give one person clean water. So we raised $15,000. On an aside, I remember that night that a drug dealer came to the party and put $500 in the bin and said to me that this was the first charitable
time.
gift he'd ever made in his life. And I remember just thinking, we're on to something.
Yeah.
We are on to something. This is different. This is what I'm excited about. I'm not trying to go and get people who are already in the flow of giving. I'm not trying to go poach World Vision's donors or, Save the Children's donors. I want, not drug dealers necessarily, but, I want to create an atmosphere where people can retrust, where the skeptic and the cynic can say, this feels different, this looks different. I'm willing to give this a shot. And we wound up raising $15,000 that night in a nightclub, taking all of the money immediately to a refugee camp in Uganda, doing a few projects, and then sending the photos and the GPS coordinates back to the people who came, saying, look, you did this. You probably didn't think anything good would happen. You came, you had some drinks, but here's what you actually did.
And
Here
it blew people's minds.
It blew people's mind, and they said, how do we do more? When's the next event? How do we give more?
Now, you were very straightforward. And when I first met you, you were like, "Oh, we're reinventing charity." You were like very straightforward about charity needs to be reinvented.
Mm-hmm.
Did
I get in trouble for this sometimes?
That's what I wanted to ask about. Was anybody else talking like this? You didn't even come out of charity world, so you wouldn't.
Well, I wouldn't have really known.
Right.
I mean, I didn't know any people that worked at charities, and at the founding moment, in so many ways, I was uniquely unqualified to ever start any sort of nonprofit that would have an impact. No experience, just no giving experience, no working in a charity experience. And I think in some ways that, later I look back and say, well, that made me uniquely qualified because I was just talking to everyday people
Yeah.
who weren't giving and I was trying to solve their problems. Hey, Rob, what would make you give? A charity where you could see where your money would go, a charity where you knew where it all went, a charity that maybe looked and felt like a brand you respected instead of the leftovers from, the old Sally Struthers TV commercials or the guilt and shame based.
Yeah.
So it was just starting with we were just talking about this a minute ago, starting with a clean sheet of paper and getting to make up all the rules. And, what would the perfect charitable experience look like? What would get me excited about giving? What would get my friends excited about giving? And we started to just do a bunch of things, which actually, so many of them just sound like common sense.
Yes, right.
Right? Tell
Right.
people what you're
Right.
doing with their money. Show them the impact. Build a beautiful, inspiring, imaginative brand. Work with local partners. I mean, this is not like rocket science. It's not like,
Yes.
we invented the electric car or anything.
I swear in the past couple of years, I have not done a Q&A where somebody didn't ask about, they had some sense in their town, their city of people need X or people need a place called Y where they can come. How do I do it? How do I? And I always just say, what is the thing that you would want to go to? What is the thing that if somebody else did it, you'd be like, I could have done that. It's all probably residing within you. The guidance, the intuition, the North Star, or whatever, the path.
A friend of ours, Michael Birch and his wife Xochitl in San Francisco, they thought San Francisco nightlife was boring. Michael's from Britain. He's like, I'm just going to do a cool club like the ones I used to go to in London. And, pretty soon there's 4,000 members. Right? So he just designed the thing that he wanted to go to dinner and have drinks at and the atmosphere. And then, there's a long waiting list to get in. It's years to get into the thing. I'm a big fan. Like people should do more of that.
So you had this sense, 100%, every single penny of the money people give should go straight to the projects, and then a completely separate fund for all the administrative costs. That seems to be like one of the first sort of central to the whole thing.
And we get criticized for that. So the critique of the 100% model is, well, Charity Water actually has overhead, and we're like, yep, we do, and it's really hard, but we're only asking 130 families at the moment to pay for that, and that then allows us to go give now 1 million people the purest giving, the drop the mic, every penny, whether it's actually a penny that someone sends or $1 million experience. So, the critic is like, well, they're making it harder for all the rest of us because we all have overhead and, we didn't separate our bank accounts. And, I've been saying for years, I talk people out of this model. I mean, I would never let a social entrepreneur. I mean, it's incredibly hard. You have to do double the work. I mean, imagine running, the overhead account and the water account and running this in perfect balance all the time. I mean, it's incredibly challenging, but it was unique to the problem we were trying to solve. What I was hearing was that people they were not giving because they didn't know where the money was going. So he said, well, we can just take this objection completely off the table by this business model. And it was right for us.
I remember the first time we met and you told me that year Charity Water had paid, I want to say $35,000 in credit card fees.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, they're serious. That's serious.
Add at least a zero now.
No way. So somebody gives money to Charity Water, 100% of that money goes to actually drill a well and get people water who need it. But then the credit card fee is paid in the well, the administrative thing, and that's now in the hundreds of thousands of dollars a year.
Yeah, I think it's $350. I think it's actually $350. I think it's actually adding a zero. So if someone gives $100 online on their Amex, I wish that I got $100, but we get 97. And you could argue that no donor would ever expect us to give more than 97. Right? That's what we got of their money.
Yeah.
They used their card. They got the points. Amex took their 3% cut. We get 97. But we said, well, you can't say 100% unless it's really 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to double down on these, on these truth claims.
Truth, honesty,
guess.
integrity, like it has to be airtight.
So for me, rather than explain to a donor why I'm reporting on $97, because the donor thought they gave 100, they never thought of like the 3%,
Yeah.
credit card fee. We just said, look, it's worth it for us to go and ask our 130 overhead donors to make up that 3% difference and then communicate the $100 proof to the donor. Rather
Yeah.
than, and 100% means 100%, and we get to say that. And
Okay.
it's pretty cool.
It's like from the get-go, and this is where I think there's so many times in being a part and watching Charity Water, you set out to do it a different way because it needs to be done a different way. There's a built-in difficulty to it that you just take on the chin over and over because it's central to the thing.
Yeah, and
it
it gets
is
only
a hill
harder.
worth dying on.
It really gets harder. And people ask all the time, do you really think at this kind of scale it's sustainable? It's one thing to go raise $1 million in overhead a year.
Yeah.
It's another to raise 14 and a half a year. It's another to raise 17 a year as the organization scales. And, it's harder. It actually gets harder, not easier. But we are really committed to this model, to the idea that there are two bank accounts, they're audited separately. And my real belief is not that a charity needs the 100% model to be successful. My belief is that people simply want to know exactly where their money's going when they give, and they are open to a lot of value propositions. If I told your listeners that my biggest problem right now was that my copy machine at the office was broken and I needed $700 to fix it, people would love to pay $700 to repair the copy machine. Right? People want to meet needs. What we've told those 130 families is that the staff salaries and the office rent and our flights around the world to manage projects in 26 countries, these are essential, valuable needs. And people raise their hand and say, cool, I don't need my name on a well. I want to pay for the receptionist's salary. I want to pay for the auditor's salary. I want to pay for the accountant's salary. I want to pay for that hydrologist's salary. So it's less about the 100%. I think it's just the clarity that has been missing from the sector. And I think, you could extrapolate that to a lot of sectors, I think. So we're trying to provide just the precise clarity that
And
the last thing, that's what I also love about water. Because I'm such a black and white person, water is really easy for me. Because let's say I was in the education space, and let's say I was building schools in Africa, and we were sitting here, on your couch, and you're saying, well, Scott, that's great that you're building those schools, but what about the quality of the education? Okay, how good are those teachers? What about the ideology in these countries, right? Are they learning a worldview that aligns with mine, right? And the answer to all those would be very subjective. Water is clean or it's dirty. It is actually binary. I can go to your tap right now and test, is the Bell family water clean or dirty? You just did it, right? And so it's clean or it's dirty, right? It's safe or it's unsafe. And I just think it's a universal good. So you don't have to be that smart. You don't have to, when you take someone from drinking dirty, unsafe water and you move them to clean water, you know that you've done something good. You know that you've improved their lives. You know that you have made the world better, healthier, happier. It's a great thing about my work. I never come off stage and have people tell me to stop it. It's not like, Scott, let them die of bad water. Let the children walk 7 hours a day. This is dead aid. This is harmful aid. Stop it. This is just destructive work.
Right.
I mean, no one does that.
There's no other side.
There's no other side.
Like, oh, water, that's overrated. There's no other side.
And what's been great is especially, I think so much of our growth these days is coming from this toxic climate, like this caustic time that we live in where people are so angry and it seems that nobody can agree on anything. And with water, everybody agrees. Republicans, Democrats, Independents, Jews, Christians, Muslims. As you know, our biggest donor has given over $15 million. He's an atheist. Thinks that God is a figment of my imagination. He thinks I'm completely Looney Tunes for believing in God, Jesus, anything even in that realm.
Yeah.
But he can stand for clean water. And he's come with me to 11 countries now to see the impact,
Yeah.
of his family. So it's a really big tent that we get to create. And, on a personal level, I've been able to live out my faith through this work for 12 years, but not make that exclusive. I mean, the thought that somebody would have to do what I do on a Sunday to work at the organization or to give to the organization or to volunteer, I mean, that's just such a crazy thought. And by the way, a lot of that still exists. Right. And in our world, there are a lot of charities that are, they so tie the religious mission with the humanitarian mission that it gets a little gray. It's like, kiss the cross and then we'll give you that thing that we're raising the money for.
As opposed to these are human beings. There's an emergency here. We help human beings.
As opposed to let's just help make sure everybody has water and food and shelter. And sure, you could tell them why you're doing it. You could tell them what this is birthed out of. Anybody can share their motivation or their faith, but it doesn't need to be done with strings attached. It doesn't need to be done, with any sort of agenda. I remember speaking at a very conservative conference once, and a guy comes up to me, and this was a group of Christians, and he was a very wealthy home builder, and he said, so you kind of given him the gospel, is the word of the Lord going out with the wells? And I'm like, nope. And he said, well, are you building wells for them, for the people of faith? Like, are you building the wells for the Christians? And I'm like, if they happen to be, I mean, we wouldn't know. There's no selection. And and he really seemed kind of upset by my answers. And I said, well, dude, do you only build homes for Christians? He's like, well, of course not. And I said, well, then certainly every contractor that works for you, right? Everybody that's putting a nail into those homes is a Christian, right? They do what you do on a Sunday. He's like, no. I'm like, well, then why should I? Like, why you don't hold yourself to the same standards? So my aid has to be attached to, an agenda, but you can just go build all the homes you want by all. I'm like, do you care about excellence? Yeah. I'm like, do you want your homes to fall down on people? Regardless of what well, of course you don't. So, I think from day one, that was just so freeing that I realized, wow, I can live out my belief system. I can live out my my personal faith. Like in the kingdom of God that I imagine, no one has bad water. Right? Dirty water is illegal. Yep. Nobody's walking 8 hours. No woman is holding a child dying of diarrhea in her arms. So I want to make that possible for everyone on the planet.
And oftentimes at the charity water things I've been to, you talk about it's not just the water, it's the hours that are spent getting the water and what the hours could be used for. It's like the infrastructure of society is connected with water.
We're doubling down on this year. This year's gala is called The Gift of Time. So we're
nice.
actually tracking the hours now that the clean water is saving. So we're going into these villages and we're measuring the time women are wasting walking to these faraway sources. And then we're now quantifying the actual time saved. It's in the hundreds of millions of hours. It's lifetimes and lifetimes and lifetimes of hours. The headline stat, when we, at least years ago, it hasn't been updated, but 40 billion hours are wasted by women just walking for water in Africa. And that adds up to the entire global workforce of every human being in the country of France working, which you could argue is slightly ironic, but it's a lot of hours. It's a huge unrealized economy that when you can free up time through bringing clean water closer to the villages, you have this explosion of productivity. Women start small businesses. They become entrepreneurs. They sell rice at the market. They sell peanuts. They sell rugs. They spend more time with their children. They get this. They reclaim this time. So that's the beauty of water. Water isn't just health. It's not just education. it's wealth. It's wealth through the restoration of time, and time turned into productivity and money.
Okay, now let's talk about part of reading the book. The book is called Thirst, by the way, RobCast friends. Thirst, out now from Scott Harrison. It's memoir. It's the origin story of this organization, but it also takes us into, you've been at this 12 years. How, because everybody has ideas, everybody wants to change the world, there's needs all around us. How do you still care? If the question is asked to you, how do you still care? How are you still passionate after 12 years? Because so many things, 7 years and we're out. You know what I mean? Or whatever the life cycle is of startups. And it's a graveyard of people who had great ideas. You know what I mean? I'm sure you see it all the time. And especially in the world, startup, nonprofit, humanitarian work, water, I'm sure you even have people coming to you all the time with like, how do I do this? What do you say to people who have that wonderful stars in their eyes? I'm going to go change things. Do you know what I mean? And they're filled with all of that. I would call it new fuel, which is when everything's new. But you're now 12 years in, so there's a whole nother layer of wisdom, which is one of the powerful things to me about the book, is you've already been like, I don't want to do this. I just want to walk away. I'm burned out. But you're still here. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
What have you
You
learned?
mentioned the new in there. There is a part of that that's really important for me, is keeping it new, finding new ways to tell the story, finding new ways to use the technology and to innovate. And so, VR kept me really excited for a year. And that was 4 years ago. When I
I
saw
was at
virtual reality,
that dinner, the gala when we
yeah,
all
you're at that dinner,
wore
right? And
the headsets. Oh my word, that was so moving.
yes, but just, I saw a VR film of, somebody showing off a hotel room, and then someone else had put a camera in a refugee camp. And I was so excited. Like my mind was exploding with ideas of how we were going to use this budding technology to intravenously deliver redemptive, empathetic content into our supporters, bodies, and then move them in a way that they hadn't been moved before, and then turn that empathy into action and help a lot of people get clean water. So I just kind of saw it, and I jumped straight to the end. So when I first saw the film, I imagined our gala with 400 people in black tie having dinner in the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and I imagined dinner finishing and hundreds of volunteers coming out carrying trays with virtual reality devices like they were dessert, strapping them all on all 400 people, pressing play in synchronicity, and then taking everyone to Ethiopia for an 8-minute journey over 6 days, bringing them back. I imagined mascara, running down people's eyes. I imagined them being deeply moved. And then I imagined asking them for money and just say, give what's in your heart. You've seen the power of clean water. And that actually happened. And there were a lot of obstacles along the way. And it was one of these things that I heard, if I heard no 100 times, it would have been understated. We could never do this. We couldn't pull it off. Couldn't get the technology. Couldn't get the headsets. And there was a moment where you were there in the room, and we raised I think $2.6 million and helped 260 villages get clean water. In that moment.
And my friends, the film was of a village. What it's like for a village doesn't have access to clean water, getting a well dug, and then water explodes up out of the ground, and they have water. And I never forget the film ended, and people start taking off their headsets, and like I was like just full on weepy, and Kristen has like tears streaming down her face. And at our table, Depeche Mode at our table, everybody's just like trying to hold it together because it's so moving. And then, I don't know if you remember this, people like started sort of clapping and then more clapping.
Yeah.
And then as people are taking off their masks, it's like silence. And then it just builds to this like ovation. I mean, you've had a number of these.
Yeah.
It's just beyond words. It's beyond
So
words.
that keeps so that sense of new. This year, the next year, I was really excited about a live satellite connection and connecting people. I'm excited about augmented reality now. The gala concept this year is completely new. It's something we've never done before. All these things could fail, so they're high stakes with all of these. which I think keeps the adrenaline flowing. But the goal, see, when you're so the mission is to bring clean drinking water to everyone on the planet. Okay, so that's pretty clear. You've succeeded in your mission if no one is drinking dirty water. Currently, 663 million people, or 1/10 of the planet, away from mission. But when your vision, if the bigger thing that you're doing is to reinvent giving or reimagine charity, that has no end.
Right.
I mean, what does that look like, right? Charity means love, and for me, there's so many just words floating around: empathy, compassion, radical generosity, moving people from, skeptics and cynics to generous givers. This virtuous cycle of redemptive care for others, and you're just always looking for new ways to test and to try and to invite people into it. And that's the party that is constantly going. That's like the club that is 24/7. And, people are just coming. Some people are coming at 8 in the morning. Some people are coming at 8 at night. Some people are coming at 2 in the morning. And they're coming into this party to deposit something of themselves, hopefully the best of themselves, right? Their most generous self, their most compassionate. They're leaving something for others. And then we're the guide, like we're the steward of that gift. And we just need to make sure that it helps people in the most impactful way, in the most sustainable way. And that the money we raise, the kids that are out there. I mean, Rob, I can't tell you the stories. We just had a 6-year-old girl watch one of our videos online, goes upstairs to her bedroom, and she starts debating before she goes to sleep, should I keep my allowance? Should I give it? Should I keep my allowance? Should I give it? Comes down the next morning, drops $8.15 on the table, on the kitchen table, tells her mom she wants to send it to Charity Water. She writes us a note. She draws a picture of herself standing to next to what she thinks a well looks like, with clean water coming out. And she says, "Dear Charity Water, please take my $8.15. I want children to stop dying of bad water." So imagine opening that envelope, right? You feel a deep responsibility. Now, $8.15 isn't that much money to us, right? It's a couple coffees, but you feel such a deep sense of responsibility to innovate, to steward that gift, to make sure that the system you're building, that it's helping as many people as possible. So there's all this stuff that's really hard and really complex that keeps me energized in year 12.
Well,
And then I get to see the people we serve. So I make sure that I'm back and forth at least a few times a year
yeah.
in the actual villages, both continuing to see the need, right? Continuing to see what 1/10 of the world is living like and the problems that we're trying to solve, and just take that in and internalize, come back from a trip having talked to a woman who lost 8 children, and knowing that my role is to give her a voice, and to stand on stage and tell her story, and hope that it moves mothers and fathers in the audience to say, we want her kids to live. We want more, kids to live. And then getting to see water shooting out of the ground and people dancing and clapping and screaming, and village elders talking about, the moment before the water and after the water, and just this, it's like the sky was, rent and water.
Yeah, you talk about that in the book. Before water and after water becomes the way these villages mark time.
Yeah, many of them. It's such a big deal. It's such a big deal.
I also, the MEDA, MEDA?
MEDA, yeah.
MEDA.
I think I might have told that story when we were on the last time. That
I
village that I
don't
lived
remember
in.
you talking about they can't get a rig there yet.
In MEDA, they can't. Well, they drilled. There were 5 failed attempts because it's up on a plateau.
Up high.
The water's just too far down. So that's been another challenge. We can't help everyone.
So you go to a village. This is the village where the 13-year-old girl hung herself.
Yep.
Because
After
she
spilling her
dropped
water.
the water pot and cracked it. She kills herself. You go sort of track down where it happened, but in the story, as you tell it in the book, there's no road yet. There isn't enough
there's no road to
infrastructure
MEDA.
yet. How do you bear that? Having seen that village that needs
Yeah,
the
and
water.
lived there. I mean, I lived there for a week. I I think about it. I think about it often, and we'll check in from time to time. Hey, what's the progress on the road? And um, I think what happened there is there would have been about a $500,000 solution to pipe water from kilometers away. But even if we had the money, because if you just looked at it, you'd say, no, go do 50 wells, never spend $500,000 on a project. But even my brain would tend to say, look, let me go and find someone to just fund that because it's worth it. And I realize it's really expensive, but it's worth it. The problem is we didn't believe it would be sustainable. So I really believed it was going to be such an elaborate system with pipes and just, I can imagine us actually doing one of the most expensive systems we've ever done, spend $500,000 to get water to 3,000 people and then it breaking and just
Hmm.
having serious maintenance issues. So we're in a little bit of a waiting game with that. And it's hard. The people you can't help. I mean, there have been wells that are 9 out of 10 wells that we're able to drill find water, and 1 out of 10 don't. And often you're able to re-drill in that same area and get water. But there are some villages that you're leaving behind for the others that are much more uh, where it's easy to help, where
Yeah.
you can deploy the capital and get results.
Do you like you're somewhere, there's multiple villages, some of them literally too far from the road or can't get them water, and then 18, 30 hours later you're home with Vic and the kids
Or even
with
crazier,
heat.
staying in a $30 million house in Europe, that belongs to a major donor or something. I mean, the extremes are
Y-
are extremes sometimes.
From New York City to like third world, there aren't roads, water, schools, electricity sometimes. How does your psyche, and you're now many years into this, traveling between these two
hmm
extremes of the planet?
I think my former life helped me with that. Living a life of fashion weeks and designer clothes and just in a culture of this is normative for a whole lot of people. They spend their money like this. They value these things. I think it's allowed me to just not judge. When I come back from Ethiopia, staying in a $5 a night hotel room, and I'm hosted by a donor in in an extraordinary mansion, I'm not walking around that mansion saying, "Oh, I can't believe they spent so much money on this. Oh, I can't believe that they have 9 bathrooms. Oh, I can't believe." I'm just telling them what I saw. I'm
Yeah,
just so excited about telling the stories,
yeah,
fresh off the trip, with no judgment, with no chip on my shoulder, and that's just come natural. I don't know how the chip when I see other people kind of angry and bitter. Why don't people get it? Why aren't they giving more?
yeah. That was my
Right?
question. Like,
Just oh my gosh, how could you have 14 cars? Right? I just don't really go there. I'm so interested in wooing that family to get excited about our work, to get excited about how their money could be used to save lives, eh, to win them over, to invite them, not guilt or shame them into it.
yeah, it's funny. Oftentimes, when I think about the state of the world, and when people will talk about what about this, what about that, I often realize my life and my work is my answer to that question. I don't know why there's that and that. I don't know why that. I don't know how you, but I'm going to do this work and try to do my part.
Bridge the gap, like.
Open people up a little bit,
hmm
heighten sensitivities. Maybe something gets stirred or something gets awoken, and who knows where it'll go from there. Your work is essentially the answer. Will you please tell the uh, 10,000 people gave money for the rig, and then it
Yeah.
crashes?
Well, we were just talking about storytelling. I mean, I think the unique thing that we are good at is storytelling, more so than design and branding or innovation or transparency. Charity Water, for 12 years, has just told a lot of stories, and that we see stories everywhere. And I was just we were talking earlier. An example of that, we crowdfunded a drilling rig for Ethiopia, call it 6 years ago. and 10,000 people gave an average of $100 to fund a rig. And this thing was $1,000,000. It was gorgeous. We painted it Charity Water yellow. We threw logos on it. We put the names of the people that donated on the rig, right? Very cool idea. We mounted a GPS unit on the rig, built a web map so people could see where the rig was at any given time. And then we gave the rig a Twitter account. So we're very proud of ourselves, right? We're kind of this whole crowdfund Kickstarter rig, track it, paint it. And this thing was going to go out and drill 90 wells a year for 20 years. And I just love the idea of legacy. I mean, imagine your piece of a legacy. Give $20 to a rig, and your $20 is going to drive around for 20 years and help people. Okay, so I find out 4 years later or so that our rig has crashed. So our local partners have crashed our rig, run into the ditch. Apparently,
Some guy
the
is
wheels
driving this $500,000
million.
$1 million truck. Some guy crashes a $1 million vehicle.
And the wheels are up, and you just imagine this like rig on its belly or on its back, right? Like almost like
It
the
literally rolled
bug on
over.
the back, right? The legs flailing in the air. So I have a picture of this in my mind. Now our partners are just fixing the rig, and they're going to put it back in operation. So this is a hiccup. Maybe it's going to take a month. Kind of like if you and I were to crash, our parents' car, we would take it to the body shop first.
Yep.
We would pay for the full repair, and
Yep.
then we would tell our parents, "Hey, Dad, I ran into a telephone pole, but I did the right thing. Fixed your car. Come look at it. It's just like new."
Actually did that in 1991.
Okay.
Did the exact same, did that. Yes. That's been done.
So that's what our local partners were doing. And then they would just continue to drill. So I hear of this, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is an amazing storytelling opportunity. I try and send a camera crew to take pictures and even video of the rig on its back, crashed. And my plan is to send it to the 10,000 people that paid for it.
This is a nonprofit nightmare.
No, this is
But
amazing. This is amazing.
To me, this is the heart of why it's you and Charity Water have what's happened through you has happened is this exact story. Because this is a nonprofit. Generally, this is a nightmare. People gave money and the vehicle crashed. You see this and get excited.
Yeah, I can see the subject line. We crashed your rig. The email opens, and there's a picture of the beautiful yellow rig with its wheels up in the air, lying in a ditch. And the story would be such an opportunity for me to speak to the challenges and to the tenacity of our local partners. And the copy would have gone something like this. Our partners don't drill wells by the highways. We don't take the easy way out. We're not drilling, next to the paved roads. We're trying to reach the most marginalized, in-need villages, and sometimes the roads aren't bad. Sometimes the communities actually build the roads by sending people out with shovels and pitchforks. And you know what? It doesn't always go well. And in trying to reach one of these remote villages, we were miscalculated. The rig is crashed. We're fixing it. Just wanted you to know. And I think that would have resonated so deeply with people. A, the charity was honest with us. B, bad stuff has happened to us too, right? There's not a person on that of driving age who hasn't had some sort of fender bender or something gone like that in their lives. And then 3, wow, the passion and commitment of these guys not to take the easy way out and really take risks to serve people with clean water. That's where I want my money going.
I love it.
I didn't get a chance. They fixed it by the time I got there. So now all I get to do is tell the story
I love
in
it.
the abstract.
Okay, let's wrap up by telling people about the spring.
So the spring was an answer to our first bad year and an existential leadership crisis for me. We had 8 years of consecutive up and to the right growth. And it felt even better because in some of those years, charitable giving was falling. So there was a 3-year period of time when Charity Water was up 490%, and American giving was down 8% in the aggregate. So we're like, yeah, we're up 500%, giving's down 8%, Charity Water's working. People are responding to the 100% model, the values, the ideas. So we have 8 years of growth. In year 8, we get 1 million human beings clean water in that year, in that calendar year, and it felt great. It was 2,500 people a day or something like that. And in our ninth year, we cannot repeat the success. The market goes down. We had a couple major donors pause their giving. A lot of them have been giving appreciated stock and such, and we have our first down year. Not only can't we, it wasn't a flat year, it was a down year. Like we're down 25%. And we go from helping 1 million people get clean water to 800,000 people. So I take this very personally. I feel like I have let down 200,000 human beings in not being able to at least repeat and grow on the success of the previous year. All we had ever known was 8 years of growth. And I am prepared to step aside. I call my board, say, time for a professional CEO. I've hit my ceiling. I'll stay with Charity Water, but I'll do speaking and fundraising and, make me the chief water boy. I'll play around at innovation, but let's hire a real leader, a real CEO who can take this thing to the next level. And it was in the fourth quarter of that down year. The writing was on the wall. My leadership team said, well, first of all, you can't do anything like this year, especially not in fundraising season. It'd be distracting. It'd make things even worse. And why don't you take January off because you're just probably burned out and see how you feel. And I took January off, and I read about this in the book, but it was kind of the disaster sabbatical. Everything goes wrong. We're given this glass house at the top of a cliff overlooking the most beautiful lake in California, and it hails all month. Basically, the house was so high it had its own weather system.
I was miserable by the end of that story.
California gets more
Yeah.
water than like 25 years in the couple weeks that I'm trying to recuperate. And I just came back and said, hey, nobody likes quitters, and it felt like a bad time to quit. You got to finish 10 years, right? It was we're starting our 10th year. So you have to at least finish out the decade strong and then do a really successful leadership transition and then let somebody else start the new decade. Well, as I started thinking about it, I said, well, why don't I just stop whining about this and solve the problem? What's the problem? The problem is we're too big to start at zero every January 1. So that was amazing. We raised $45 million in our 8th year, but the ticker goes from December 31st to 0 on January 1. We got to go do it all over again. And I remember the online giving number. This just shows what it feels like. I think we did 280 grand online on December 31st and $2,000 on January 1. So you just fall off a cliff. And it's like you've been taking the boulder, up to the top of the mountain.
Right.
December 31st, you get it up to the top of the mountain, you get 1 million people clean water, and then you slip, and the thing, flattens you, goes all the way to the bottom again, and the mountain just grew another 20% or whatever you're trying to grow. Right? So now you start over again. So the spring was the answer to that. And I said, well, if I look at the companies that I really respect these days, look at a Netflix, look at a Spotify. They don't start at zero. They have a bunch of people supporting their products month in and month out. They actually have a loyal customer base. Now, sure, we're getting content or we're getting music or we're getting magazines, but the subscription model was just way more interesting. And the birthdays were great. You did a fantastically successful birthday campaign, but you did one, right? And about 50,000 people did one birthday for Charity Water. So we would just have to keep finding new people every year, and it was exhausting. So the idea was, well, could we build, Netflix for pure good? Could we build a community of people so generous, the world had never seen anything like this before, where they would show up month in and month out, giving what they could, right? $10 a month, $30 a month, which is what it costs to give one person clean water, $100 a month if people could afford it. Maybe a business could give $500 a month on their corporate Amex. Could we create this community of people, and we would deliver 100% of the money to people in need of clean water, and then we would deliver stories of tangible impact to this community. So we launched it with a 20-minute film. People thought I was absolutely nuts. They're like, no one's going to watch a 20-minute film on Facebook. People don't even watch 20-second films these days.
What's it called, by the way? Because it's an amazing
The
film.
Spring. Yeah,
The
it's gotten
Spring.
10 million views now.
On YouTube.
It's on YouTube,
Do
Vimeo.
The Spring Charity Water YouTube search.
Yeah, and so we made this 20-minute film. We worked with the first outside person ever, Jason Russell, who'd started Invisible Children, who is just a great storyteller. And we put the story out there, and we just told people, here's what we've done in the first 10 years. Here's how big our vision is. Will you show up every month until the problem is solved, giving whatever you can? And the thing just took off. It just exploded. Now over 100 countries, have members in the spring, and the average is actually $30. So we have people giving less, we have people giving more, but the average across now 30,000 people, and growing, quickly every day. And we just continue to invite people into this.
So people Google charity water.
They just go to charitywater.org/spring.
It'll tell them everything you need to know.
Yeah, charitywater.org/spring. That's actually the greatest, if there's any call to action, that's the greatest way that people can help is to join that community, learn more about the issue.
Yeah.
We're really trying to connect members. We have some ideas of connecting members with each other's, like 6 people in Montana and 42 people in Iowa. Like, what if we could get them together? What if we could build community? So that has now, we came off the spring. We grew 40% last year. And at the mid-year, we're up another 40% this year. So it's working. So now,
love it.
We can.
I love it.
We're going to get 1.5 million people clean water this year.
RobCast peoples, you know what to do here.
It's I'm a member. My wife's a member. I mean,
you know what to do. I love it. And the new book is called Thirst. I haven't said too much about it because you just need. You just got to enter in, and the less you know, the more you'll, I think, with that book. I mean, I knew the stories, and the book is very, very powerful, but I can only imagine somebody who hasn't heard any of this. Thirst, available now, wherever fine books are sold.
You've said that a few times in your life.
I'm so glad we met 9 years. I think it was 9 years ago, but most of all, you're not only still going. You not only survived this, but you're like more filled with passion and hope and love than ever. And I have one quote here at the end. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to finish with this. Page 312 of the advanced preview copy of the book. Do you know what I'm going to read?
I don't.
You quote, "There's an old rabbinic saying that I love." So I already love it. I already love that.
Just the fact that I said it.
But Scott writes this. There's an old rabbinic saying that I love. Do not be afraid of work that has no end. And then he says, that's how I've come to see this journey. If your work is in the service of others, if you are compassionately pursuing an end to the suffering of people less fortunate than you, then your work will simply never end. The idea of endless work used to scare me, but not anymore. Now, it inspires me. I don't even know what to say. Let's end there. Thank you for coming to the Back House.
Thanks for having me back.
In Los Angeles. I'm a huge fan. And I'm just cheering you on.
Good to see you.
And I hope this podcast episode introduces all sorts of people to what you're doing. Grace and peace, my friends. Thanks, Scott.
Thanks, Rob.